going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. You know who it is by now.
Jimothy.
Now, ladies and gents, we are back with another deck profile, and if you know anything about me, I love playing different decks in Yu-Gi-Oh. It kind of like fulfills my heart, and you can just check back through the channel from some of the deck profiles I've actually profiled on the channel. You'll see that I've played a wide variety of decks, and this deck is no different. It's definitely rogue, not anything that's going to be able to take you to the next YCS, for example, but it definitely could do something at your locals depending on how you build the deck. Now, this is my take on the deck. I'm still in testing phase, as I normally am, so bear in mind, ladies and gents, there may be a few things that could be changed, and if there is, definitely get at me in the comment section below with your thoughts. So the deck that I'm profiling today is Metaphys. Now, these are a very interesting deck because it focuses on using the banished zone or remove from play zone to be able to function. And Metaphys Ragnarok is probably your play starter. So when this card is normal summoned, it can banish the top 3 cards of your deck, and if you manage to banish any of your Metaphys cards, this card gains 300 attack for each. So it can get pretty big. Also, if this card causes battle damage, you can special summon a Metaphys monster from your deck. Now, this card is a tuner, so there's definitely potential for some synchro plays right there. But I'm going to say out now, ladies and gents, you don't necessarily need your extra deck to be able to win with this deck, just by the nature of how it plays. So 3 Ragnarok. Next, we have triple Metaphys. Now, the Metaphys are based off cards that currently exist in Yu-Gi-Oh, which is really interesting. And obviously, this is based off Metaphys, and I believe it belongs to the Metaphys archetype. But anyway, if this card is special summoned by the effect of a Metaphys monster, so Ragnarok, for example, you can actually banish all spells and traps that your opponent controls, non-targeting, get rid of everything, which is super duper useful. Also, if this card is banished during the standby phase of the next turn, you can actually search a Metaphys card, so add a Metaphys card from your deck to your hand. So it's actually a bit of a rotor as well. So typically you try and max out on the ones that kind of like fulfill your requirements to be able to get things from the deck and get your engine going. So triple Metaphys. Next, we're playing triple Chaos Daedalus. This effect is very similar to Metaphys, except that it banishes all monsters, which is super useful. Also, if this card is banished during the next standby phase, you can banish a Metaphys card from your deck. So again, it allows you to be a little bit more consistent, so you definitely want to max out on those 2 at least. Well, those 3 cards at least. Next up, one that is probably a bit up for contention. I'm not too sure whether or not I should play him at 3 or 2. Could potentially be a 2-of, to be honest. 1 Metaphys Decoy Dragon. So this card is interesting. Basically, when an attack is declared, you can actually special summon a banished Metaphys monster straight onto the field. Now, bearing in mind from the last 2 that I've gone through, depending on your situation and depending on your setup, you can actually wipe a board full of cards. It outs Dragoon, provided you've played around the negate already. It outs just a whole host of cards, so super useful. But again, I'm not too sure whether 3 is the correct ratio. It seems to be working fine, but then again, it can be cloggy because by itself it doesn't do a whole lot. Its pendulum effect is very similar, to be honest. It can banish itself from the pendulum zone, and it actually brings itself back during the standby phase, or is it end phase? One of the phases. But again, useful card. And then finally, we have 2 Metaphys Tyrant Dragon. So this card, when it's banished on the standby phase of the next turn, you can actually special summon a Metaphys monster from your hand. So again, super useful. It's probably one of your biggest beaters at 2900, and this is the card that you're typically going to go for if you're trying to go for game, and the card that you would like to summon off Ragnarok, depending on your situation. Again, I think this is a 2-of, mainly because it doesn't do a whole lot otherwise. So yeah. Next up, for some supplementary engines. Now, this is again up for contention. I'm playing the Nemesis engine. So I've got 2 Nemesis flags, so you can shuffle back one of your banished monsters into the deck and special summon this card, and then you can activate effects to be able to add a Nemesis card from your deck to your hand, which is super useful. Yeah. Bearing in mind, keep in mind the levels, ladies and gents, because we play Ragnarok as our main starter, some of the levels can correspond to some of the synchro monsters that we were able to summon in our extra deck. Next, we're playing 2 Nemesis Corridor again for a nice easy rank 8 play. This allows you to add one of your banished Nemesis monsters back from your hand, and it also has the same summoning condition as Nemesis Flag, so double Nemesis Corridor. And then next up for the one-offs, we're playing 1 Nemesis Keystone and 1 Arch Nemesis Protoss. This card is, I'll be honest, people have overlooked this card because it actually is really powerful. So Protoss allows you to banish cards on the field with a declared attribute, and then until the end of the next turn, neither player can summon monsters with that attribute basically. So depending on what matchup you're against, for example like Dragon Link like to play lights and darks, you can actually just mess up their whole turn, to be honest. Nemesis Keystone, when this card is banished, it's added back, basically simple. It just keeps recurring itself from the banished piles from back to your hand, so it's easy fodder. Next up for another supplementary engine, we are playing double Aloof Lupine. This card is fantastic. So banish a card from your hand as cost to be able to banish a card from your deck. Super useful. It can't get ashed, obviously. Infinite impermanence is a thing, but it does activate its effect for cost, and then when it leaves the field you can add one of those cards back to your hand. And the card typically that is always nice to play is this card right here, Necroface. Triple Necroface. This gets your engine going because when it's banished, you can banish the top 5 cards of your deck as well as your opponent doing the same thing. So if you hit Necroface off Necroface off Necroface, it's not a once per turn. You can actually banish 15 cards and literally get your whole engine in a banished pile to be able to function, as well as mess up your opponent. Typically, decks do not like to have half of their deck in the banished zone or removed from play pile. So Necroface is essential. It's also a nice little beat stick as well, because if you manage to hit this off Gold Sarg, you can banish a few cards, and then when it arrives in your hand, you can actually normal summon it, shuffle everything that's banished back into the deck, and it increases its attack by every card shuffled by 100. So it can actually swing over quite a few things, and you can actually go for game with this card. So triple Necroface is a must. And then finally, we're playing 1 Shiranui Spirit Master. When it's banished, you can pop a card on the field. As simple as that. And for the hand traps, finally, we're playing triple D-Shifter. Again, we don't want our opponents to play. Typically, we're going to hurt their deck a lot more than it hurts ours to be able to banish cards. So Dimension Shifter just says, right, everything that's sent to the graveyard for the next 2 turns, banished. Now we're on to the spells, and we are playing triple AC Metaphys. Interesting card. It allows you to draw 1 each turn by banishing a Metaphys card or discarding a Metaphys card, and then when a Metaphys card is banished, if it's your turn, you can everything on the field loses 500 attack except for Metaphys monsters, and your opponent's turn you can change the battle position. It's not useful in that, but again, it just gets your engine going. It allows you to draw cards. It's a continuous spell, so you can just keep using its effect, so super useful. Next up, I actually played 2 of the field spell. You don't have to play the field spell, it's quite easy to get past it, but if you do see it's a nice thing, hence why I haven't maxed out on it. You can actually search it depending on your game state, so it's a nice thing to have. So basically, you can normal summon a level 5 or higher Metaphys monster with attributing once per turn, and it actually makes your Metaphys monster effects spell speed 4, so your opponent can't respond to them. So again, really powerful, especially if you've got a nice setup. You can actually banish their back row, banish their front row, and there's nothing can be done about it. So 2 Metaphys factor. Next up, we're playing 2 Crossbreeds. This just allows you again to get your engine going, to banish cards from your hand, to add cards to your banish cards from your hand and field, to add cards to your hand, just to get our Metaphys monsters in our remove from play pile. And then finally, for the spells, we're running 1 Gold Sarg and 1 Dimensional Fissure. Really powerful card. Your opponent sees this, it's got a target on its head, which is always a good thing actually. It's a shame it's at 1, because if it was at 2, it would be just super overpowered. But it allows for the focus to be on this, as opposed to some of your Metaphys monsters, because typically your opponent doesn't want their monsters to be going to the banished pile. Next, for the traps, we are playing triple Metaphys Ascension. So this again allows you to draw by banishing a card, Also, if this card is banished, you can add a Metaphys card from your deck to your hand. So this again acts as a nice little search tool. Combined with some of the other cards, you actually want to banish this depending on what your game state is, just to get your engine going again. So I'll play it as a 3 of, because if you hit this off Necroface, it's a nice feeling. It is a hard once per turn, so you do need to bear that in mind. But again, it can be really useful. And then we are playing double Metaphys Dimension and 1 Macrocosmos. Metaphys Dimension basically allows you to banish 1 card on the field, as well as being able to banish one of your if one of your Metaphys monsters is banished, you can banish a card, and I believe it's non-targeting as well. And then obviously Macrocosmos, you know what this does, just send everything to the banish pile. Along with Dimensional Fisher, it's a nice little tech right here. So that is the main deck, ladies and gents. Now, the extra deck I have here is not complete. So what I will say is you can literally play anything. There's probably 2 cards in here that you do definitely want to see. So to start us off, I've gone with 1 Hole Shinnigan, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Nightmare Unicorn. Nothing needs to be said about those. I've gone with double Topologic Zero Boros. This is the card that you typically want to see as well. It's really easy to go into this because Metaphys tend to swarm the board after their first turn, after they've managed to get their engine going. So double Topologic Zero Boros, just to get some crazy OTK potential. You can swing for like 12,000 depending on the game state, especially if you've hit a couple of Necro Faces, because typically your opponent will have cards banished as well. So Topologic Zero Boros is a definite. I'm also running 1 Topologic Bomber Dragon, literally just because. Also for the synchros, we're running 1 Geomathmech Final Sigma, 1 Draco Berserker of the Tenny, and 1 Metaphys Horus. This typically is what you go into. Now I am waiting on another card called Vampire Sheridan, and I can't remember where I've seen it, but it's a crazy tech online that allows you to just take one of your opponent's monsters with Horus, go into Sheridan, and make any rank 6. Well, you can literally make any rank monster using Sheridan, which is crazy. You can just literally change the levels to whatever you want it to be. So Metaphys Horus is a nice tech. Draco Berserker of the Tenny just banishes your opponent's monsters, and Geomathmech Final Sigma just literally sits on the board and swings at things. And then finally, we are also running 1 Brionac Dragon of the Ice Barrier and 1 Angel of Zera. So when this card's banished, it's returned to the field during the next turn, and it gets big based on the cards that are banished, which is useful. But again, ladies and gents, there are probably about 3 or 4 spots missing that I'm kind of waiting on. But like I said, you do not need your extra deck. The way that this deck functions, you literally end up banishing half your deck, banishing half of your opponent's deck, and then you just swing for a game with Ragnarok and Tyrant Dragon. So it is what it is. So we find ourselves at the end of another video. Hopefully you enjoyed the deck profile, ladies and gents. Definitely get at me in the comment section below with your comments on how this deck could be improved. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I should be able to get some footage for you guys, and I will have some live duels on the channel coming up this week. But anyway, as always, you know what to do by now. Hit that like button, share, subscribe, all of that wonderful, beautiful, good stuff, and we will definitely see you guys on the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.